Welcome back, my friends, to the D-Rate the Hate podcast. I am your host, Wilk of WilksWorld.com, and I am so incredibly grateful that you are taking the time to join me for another powerful DTH episode. Friends, at the D-Rate the Hate podcast, it's all about bettering the world one attitude at a time. See, we did not create the hate, but with your help, we can derate the hate. That all starts with gratitude and personal accountability. We cannot control everything that happens to us in life, but we can control how we react to it. How we act, how we react, no matter what happens to us, how we react to it makes the difference. Friends, there is only one good thing about a bad attitude, and that is that we have the ability as individuals to change it. Here on the DTH podcast, we strive to bring you great guests and provide tools to do just that. Please be sure to share it with your friends. Subscribe if you haven't done so. Ratings and feedback are always greatly appreciated. And with that, let's get to this week's episode. Friends, have you ever heard of a humanity propulsion engineer? Well, I hadn't until I met this week's guest, Nathaniel A. Turner. Nate is a TED Talk speaker and the author of multiple books, including the history-making Raising Supaman. Nate's books, videos, speeches, and training programs have empowered countless numbers of people and organizations. The diversity of Nate's formal education, combined with a wide range of personal experiences and professions, makes him a modern-day Renaissance man. Today, Nate teaches businesses, schools, not-for-profits, and families how to achieve any goal or objective through backwards design. Friends, the phrase has been said many ways, but "you shall know them by their fruits" is so very true, because the children we're raising today are what we're leaving for this world tomorrow. So we're talking about how to be a good person, how to be a good parent, and what it means to be a humanity propulsion engineer with my new friend, Nathaniel A. Turner. Here we go. Nate Turner, thank you for joining me on the D-Rate the Hate podcast, my friend. Been looking forward to it, and so glad you're taking the time today.
Thanks for having me, and I hope I don't disappoint. So glad to be.
I know, based on what I've looked at so far, you will not disappoint, man. So good to have you here, Nate. And you know, the first thing that I saw, the first thing that stood out to me when I started looking through your material was the term or the title Humanity Propulsion Engineer. And I had not seen that one before. I like it because one of the things that I try to bring out in the D-Rate the Hate podcast is we all need to see the humanity in everybody around us, not just those that we agree with, but those that we agree with, those that we disagree with, those that we may have never ever encountered in any other way in our life. But we all have to see the humanity in each other if we're going to survive as a people. Talk to me about that title, Nate.
So one of the things I wanted to do is share who I was in a form that was different from the way most people who do a lot of interviews, who speak publicly, who do workshops and training. Most people call themselves a motivational speaker, an inspirational speaker, or something of that nature. I did not want to be any of that. I wanted, in some ways, to have people think of me as a public intellectual or as an old school Renaissance person, a person who has an opportunity to talk about a number of subject matters, who has experience or training or learning, in particular, a series of subjects. I wanted to do that. But then those ways, saying that seemed a little bit old fashioned. And I wanted to say something that captivated people's attention about what I really think is important which is about the state of humanity. And so I have a son who's an engineer, and he tells me, "You can't be an engineer. You haven't gone through the training to be an engineer." I said, "Yes."
Leave it to an engineer to say that, right?
You're absolutely right. But I said, "Son, there's a thing called social engineering, which is the ability to get humans to be better than we have ever been." And so I say everyone should be a humanity propulsion engineer, and that we all should be about the business of making sure that humanity moves forward, moves forward positively. And we should do that using tools, techniques, and strategies. And some of them I'm sure we'll talk about, so that we can be a better society and we can live together, quote unquote, happily ever after.
No doubt, man. That is definitely cool because yeah, we find ourselves, Nate, in a time where, you know, there are so many things that seem to be dividing us as people, and there are people that are out there who capitalize on uh that hate. I mean, that's one of the things that I talk about a lot, right? Is hate.
Sure.
And as another friend of mine, I can't remember exactly the phraseology he used when he said it, but they're basically hate entrepreneurs. They're capitalizing on the fact that hate is one of the things, and toxicity is one of those things that goes viral. It gets them the most attention. And people like you and I, or people like him and I, you know, those that are actually trying to bring people together, often have a harder row to hoe, because, you know, it's not as sexy. It's not as, it's not, it doesn't grab people the way that some of that toxicity and some of those things that rile up your emotions do. So I love it when people like you, Nate, are out there trying to make the world a better place, trying to show others how we, you know, no matter what our beliefs are, no matter what our skin color is, no matter what this, that, or the other is, we can all live together, and we can live together in peace and harmony. It's just a matter of having the right mindset to do it. I love that title, the Humanity Propulsion Engineer. It's so cool. And you know, Nate, one of the things that I really wanted to talk about today, because it stood out to me so much with you, is the fact that you focus a lot on kids and how to raise and be good parents, and raise good kids. So
Right.
talk to me about, I know you've written some children's books, and we'll get into that a little bit.
Sure.
But what brought you to that point where you're like, I got to focus on the children. I got to focus on being a good parent. I want to tell other people how to be good parents.
Yeah. So I'm a product of parents, but more specifically, I'm a product of grandparents, and I'd say grandmothers, and maybe one grandmother more than another. Not that one is less than the other, but one grandmother in particular who, if there is a belief that anyone has in something bigger than them, be that existence, God, or the universe, or some divine, or whatever word one might give it, that my grandmother epitomized that for me. And one of the things she would always say to me was that one day you're going to be a tree, and you're going to have fruit, and you're going to be responsible for that fruit. Then she would quote this scripture that said that the tree shall be known by the fruit that it bears.
Nice.
And to me, I mean, that symbolizes in many ways what it means to be a parent, and that the best that I can hope of my child is in part based on how well that I am. And so that's one of the messages I try to explain to parents all the time. Too often we ask children to do and be stuff that we're not that ourselves. So if I want my son to be great, and for him to be respectful, and him to be kind, and him to be a person who is a humanitarian and who believes in philanthropy and so forth, then his dad has to first be that.
Yep. No, that's cool, man, because one of the biggest problems, and I've talked about this so many times, Nate, and it just gets me to my core when I look at different things. I see different things online, and I think one of the biggest problems we face, especially as a country here, you know, here in the United States, is the lack of good parenting, the lack specifically of fathers in the home, you know, and like your grandmother instilled in you. You know, you will be known as the fruit that, you know, that you bear. And you have to, or people have to realize that we as parents have a strong responsibility to be there, be engaged, you know, not just be there, but to be engaged. As you know, I had another gentleman on the podcast a couple months ago that talked about being engaged. You know, Ken Gordon talked about being engaged as a father, and not just being present, but being engaged, and how important that is when it comes to raising good children, raising good people, you know. And I love the story about your son telling you can't be an engineer because you didn't go to school, because he's an engineer. So, I mean, just the fact that you guys still have that kind of relationship now, is a testament to the kind of father that you are. But talk about the importance of and what you can do as a father to be not just present but be engaged, and how much of a difference that makes in the people that those children are going to become.
Yeah. So one of the things I think this country does poorly is that we don't have any training whatsoever for perhaps the most important job that anyone will ever hold in this country. In fact, I dare say, in the planet. People are in the business of producing the future citizens of a planet, and we don't have any training for the future citizens of the planet. Now, if I ask you what could you do that has that much importance that no one would ask you to have training for, you could not name another position in the world. You can't be an engineer. My son's an electrical and computer engineer. He can't be an electrical and computer engineer without training. He couldn't be a petroleum engineer if he wanted to be. He couldn't be a astrophysicist. If you pick whatever the most important careers are on the planet, a physician, a surgeon, they all require training. Well, somebody births physicians and surgeons, and someone raises physicians and surgeons before they get a chance to go to medical school. And those people have no training. And this country is not seeing fit that we should have training. Now, we'll give people Lamaze to teach kids how parents to breathe and eat ice chips and rub on a certain part of the back when a mom's pregnant. But once the baby's born, within 36 hours, the hospital puts you out. And in my case, the only thing that I knew to do is I knew more about how to put a car seat in, because that had instructions, than I did about raising a child. So I think the country starts off at a terrible position that we ask people to continue to populate the planet, but we don't give people any kind of guidance about what it is we want those people to be, who are going to be the future citizens and future leaders of the country.
Right. No, that's it's a phenomenal point. And how we go about learning to be parents, I think is it's obviously, we generally were looking to the examples that our parents set before us, right?
Right.
And so if you have a parent that was not engaged, if you have a parent that was abusive, if you have a parent that just made very bad decisions all the time, there's a very strong likelihood that you are going to follow suit. You are going to do the same poor things that they did.
Absolutely.
So there's got to be a way to break the cycle. There's so many things, and we hear. This one is one that just blows my mind all the time, that everybody wants to blame their own faults on all of society instead of looking internally.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think as a parent, we also need to look. I think it's critically important that as a parent we have to look within ourselves and say, what am I doing? And I talk about this all the time, personal accountability. What am I doing today that my kid is going to do later? And if my kid is going to follow what I'm doing, is what I'm doing the right thing, or do I need to do something a little bit better today so maybe they're better tomorrow?
Absolutely. So you hit on a couple of things, and I hope I can remember them all. There are three things in particular that you said that came to mind. First is Aristotle's quote, who says, "Bring me a child at 7, I'll show you the man." And so, right, so that implicit in that statement, and now child psychologists and child development experts will tell you that that's true, that most of a child's brain is fully developed by age 7, and most of their social characteristics are developed by 7. And most children, if they can't read at grade level by age 7, will never read at grade level. So in those first 7 years, most of those children spend those 7 years, where? With their parents. long before they get to school, long before he can complain about what schools are or not doing, or any kind of social institution or any social structure. The parents are the ones that prepared or left the child unprepared in those first 7 years. There's also the rule of 10,000 hours, which tells us that this the rule of deliberate practice. That if you and I were to do something every day for 8 hours, and we took 2 weeks off every year, in 5.5 years, we would be experts at something. So in many cases, children become experts at nothing because for those 10,000 hours they spent with the parents poured nothing in them that can be useful moving forward in their lives.
Isn't that
so
sad?
I think, yeah. So I think that those are kind of things that we need to take in consideration. And then the last thing I would say about what to do as a parent, one of the things what people often ask me what I would tell my son if he was thinking about being a parent. And I'd say to him, before he even unzipped his pants and considered engaging in activity, there are a series of things I'd like him to do as if he were going to morph into the future. I'd want him to ask himself clearly about who he is in terms of the son of Nate Turner. And I'd want him to assess all his father's flaws because many of his father's flaws are also now flaws of his. I'd want him to assess who his mother is because he's probably choosing a woman to be with who reminds him of his mother because the first woman he probably ever loved would be his mother. But of the love of his mother has nothing to do with the love you'll have of someone you want to be romantically involved with. That's a maternal love. So
very different thing.
Are you choosing right? So there's a series of questions. The person you're going to choose, is this someone you can have a sustainable relationship with? If you all can't make it for whatever reason, will you be committed to the getting to that child to the finish line?
Right.
And so there's a series of questions that I would ask like that.
No, and that kind of leads me into the next thing I wanted to talk about, because this is something that I know you talk about a lot, Nate, is that how to design a life template, that working backwards mentality, and when you're going to raise a child, kind of doing that mind or that picture in your mind of who that child should be later in life, and what you're going to do to work towards that. Talk to me about that life template that you've worked on, Nate, because to me it's a fascinating concept, and I think a lot of parents discount thinking about that far in the future. They're just worried about today. I mean, I know with our daughter, I've got a 3-year-old daughter, and
congratulations.
Well, thank you, but sometimes the everyday, just the day to day, the outbursts, the fits, the reading this book or that book, or can we watch this show, or I'm not going to eat my dinner today. All those things just get so overwhelming on a day to day basis that sometimes we forget about what's this child going to look like in 20 years. And what can I do today to get them to that spot? Talk to me about that life template, Nate.
Sure. So I know you mentioned earlier about once driving. You're driving a truck. Is that correct?
Yeah. I used to be I was a truck driver for a lot of years.
So if I could, I'd like to compare it to what you used to do, which is to say someone could tell you that there was a place you needed to be to pick up, I don't know, a haul. Would it be a haul? Is that what the correct word would be?
Haul, a load, whatever.
Yep. And so wherever that thing was, you knew that you had to get there. Now, you also probably knew how many miles it was. You probably knew how many times you would need to stop and rest if you were going to stop. You probably knew how much gas you were going to need. You probably knew how much the cost of gas was going to be to go. You did not take that journey unprepared. The life template is the same thing. The life template is saying to parents, you know that there is a load or haul at the end, and you've got to take the journey, and you got to drive every mile like you did. You got to drive every mile, every quarter mile, every half mile. You drive it as they come. You can't go 2 miles before you go 1 mile. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't be prepared for the long-term journey. So the life template is that. The life template is saying, where is it that you want to be in the end? And then let's work back and make sure we have enough fuel. Let's make sure we know where the mile markers are. Let's make sure we know where the right stops are to make. Let's make sure we know when it's safe to stop. Let's make sure we know the right places that we enjoy. We can find food to eat that we enjoy. Any number of things that you would experience on your journey, it's the same kind of journey. My dad told me after I finished law school, he said, "It took you long enough. You should be a congressman or a senator by now." And to which at first, man, I was salty. I was like, dude, you didn't help me do none of this. Like, how dare you? That's what I really wanted to say. Like, I wanted to say some other words to him. But I said, you know what? Maybe he's right. But the larger question is, how would I have gotten here? See, it's easy to tell me what I should have done, but you didn't give me a prescription. You didn't give me a plan. You didn't give me a strategy to make that happen. Now, when I have my own child, because I'm graduating from law school and no one is looking for me to hire me. And now I've got this degree and that's great, but now I still don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know how I'm going to take care of this woman and do what I said I promised to do when I said for better or worse, richer and poorer. I know she was not really keen on the poor part. So
they never are.
Right. I got to figure it out. And so then I wrote Harvard and said, if I could have figured out where I was going, where would I have wanted to go today as a law student? I'd want to be at Harvard because no one would care what my grades were. And you would have introduced me today as a Harvard law graduate. And so, okay, well, then let me figure out what Harvard requires. And if we could figure out how to do this unborn child, if we could figure it out, how to get this child to Harvard, then let's figure out how to do that. And so
write that roadmap, right? Put together that itinerary.
Absolutely.
So that we know exactly what we've got to do. Going back to the analogy of a truck driver.
Absolutely.
You know, we plan from our origin to our destination.
Absolutely.
We figure out what we're going to do between here and there so that we do those risk assessments. We do those we look at all the different factors that may play into it. So that way when we begin at our origin, we don't have to try and figure it out as we're going along.
Nope.
We get there unscathed a lot more often with a good plan.
Absolutely. It's the same thing. Just like, again, I mean, you articulated as well as anyone, and I knew you would get it. You got mile markers. You can look at it and have an idea where you're at. And that's the same thing with the template. Harvard says to us, or to anyone, that they look for students with great grades and great test scores. There's no guarantee you can get into a Harvard or Yale or any Ivy League school because they only admit 3 to 5% of the population of the applicants. That's fine. But knowing that doesn't deter you from doing your part to get to that level. So
that's right.
Okay, so hey, we got an unborn child. What should we be doing while this child is in the womb? Okay, well, there's some things we could read, and it tells us what to do. Read to your child, sing out loud, so forth. Now, what are we going to do when the baby's here? Okay, we're going to read to the child. We're going to introduce the child to big pictures so the child can start increasing their vocabulary, because we're going to say everything that's on the big picture. We have a big picture of a lion. We're going to make the roar of a lion. We're going to spell roar out loud. And we're going to do all kind of stuff till the baby loses his attention, and we're going to show another picture. And then the second thing that Harvard introduced in the application was that they wanted students who were going to be world citizens. And this is 1994. And so at the time I thought, well, that's interesting. I guess that means languages, to be able to speak more than one language, but it also means to have some familiarity with other cultures. And you've talked about this. And so we were like, well, let's make sure we can raise a child who's globally and culturally competent.
Right,
and in the first part, rather than focusing solely on test scores and grades, we're like, we're going to want to raise a child who's intellectually competent. And then the last part Harvard said was we were looking for students who cared for something greater than themselves. Again, something you're talking about. And we're like, okay, well, that means raising someone to be a humanitarian who cares about the greater good. And so those things became the template for everything we were going to do for his life.
No, that's awesome. And that really leads Nate into into one of the other things that I wanted to talk with you about, because I saw this written and I don't remember where you wrote it, but talks about instead of seeing the social, political, and geoeconomic issues as challenges, and the systems systems and structures, instead of constantly scrutinizing those things and blaming our problems on those things, let's look internally, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Let's look at the faults and failings that we have as humans, that we have as individuals, and go to the thing that I talk about so much on the podcast is personal accountability. What can we do as parents? What can we teach our kids about personal accountability? Because everybody knows, and I don't care who you are, what your color of skin is, where you're from, what part of the world that you come from, we are all going to face challenges. And it's very easy, right, for us to blame what we can't do on something else, on some political system, or some hate group, or some this or that or whatever. But there are ways that we can look within ourselves and say, hey, we're gonna circumvent all this garbage over here that is really in a lot of ways just a distraction, and we're going to make our life the life that we want it to be. Right?
Yeah.
Did I read that right?
Yeah. No, you're right. So the first part is that we do, as a nation, like to put the responsibility and onus on systems and structures. I think we do that sometimes purposely so that we avoid having to be accountable for the things that we mess up. So if I'm a group of politicians, I can say, hey, I'm trying to do it, but the system is such and such a way. Or if I'm a local legislator, I say, hey, this is the way that things are structured. Well, no, it's not systems and structures. It's people. People decide that these are the systems and structures that should govern a situation. And so people could then also change. But we make it sound like these magical systems and structures that just float out of the air.
They just came out of nowhere. I don't know what happened.
Right. Now, the one system that we do have, we've messed up, which is the ecosystem. So when we're talking about the state of the climate, we start talking about the state of the environment. Humans have messed that up. And now we're trying to figure out how to fix that. So the one system that could have existed without human manipulation is a system that's messed up. And the systems that we created, we want to pretend like something else is responsible for that. So yeah, to your point, I think we need to turn our attention to just how are we going to be better, and stop trying to blame everything on some artificial systems and structures that we in fact put in place.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And yeah, the thing for me that I always go back to, Nate, is personal accountability, and how we as individuals can basically leave the world better tomorrow than it was today. And we can try all day long to try to manipulate different power structures and try and change the minds of other people and do all these different things. But the real thing is we really need to focus on who each of us are as individuals, right? Mm-hmm. And make, I always say the Derate the Hate podcast is all about bettering the world one attitude at a time. If we can help people to see that changing our mindset and changing the way that we do things, and changing our mindset as an individual and living a better life as an individual, it really goes back to that old phrase, be the change that you want to see in the world, right? And that stuff is contagious. That stuff starts a movement. It starts, it may start with you, and then all of a sudden your wife sees it, and then your wife starts to see what you're doing, and then all of a sudden she starts to change her mindset and thinking a little ways, and then her friends see that in her, and then it just starts to kind of like a mustard seed, right? It starts with that little tiny speck of a seed, one of the smallest seeds on the planet, and turns into this massive formation that is just, it's like, how did that massive thing come out of that one small speck? And I really think it starts with us as an individual. That's why I love what you do, Nate, with the books that you've written, the children books that you've written, and how that concept of that life template can be a roadmap for parents to show their children, you know, there is a better way than you're going to see out there amongst your friends, because we can't reach everybody, but we should be able to reach our kids, right?
Yeah, you hope so. We produce them and they live with us. So yeah, you'd hope we could reach them. You mentioned the word who, and if I could, I just want to say that one of the things I think parents should be mindful. I think any of us should be mindful of is this part. Two parts. First, you and I are not who we think we are. You and I would never be who we think we are. You and I are not even who we believe others think we are. You and I are only who those who we're in relationship with understand us as being. And too few people understand that. And let me give you an example of what I mean. You could ask me what kind of father I am. I could tell you I'm a great dad. You could ask me what I think my son believes I am as a father. I could tell you my son thinks I'm fabulous. You could meet my son and ask him, who am I as a dad? He'd say, he's garbage. Who am I, Wilk? Am I the guy who thought he was great? Am I the guy who believed his son thought he was fabulous? Or am I garbage? See, the child is the person who determines who I am, because the child is the child and I am the parent. And you asked me what kind of father I was. I don't get to determine what kind of father I am. I'm not my father. I'm someone else's father. And so the child then says what kind of person I am. Too few of us understand that we're in a relationship with people. And those people who we're in a relationship with, based upon the way we treat them, will judge us. And our lasting legacy will be based not on who we think we are, but on those who we came in contact with while we're on this journey. And that's what I'm mindful of on a daily basis. My time is going to end on this planet. And when my time does end, if my time ended today and you were the last person that I talked to, then Wilk is going to judge who I was on this planet. And you're going to tell my story as much as if anyone. And what I hope Will says is Nate was a guy who helped serve and made sure other people knew that their life mattered. That's what I'm hoping I'm doing. But my struggle to do every day is to make sure that I do the best I can in that in word and deed to convey that to people like Will. Otherwise, when my time is up, I'm going to be somebody completely different. I don't think we think enough about who we are and who we want to be when our time is up on the planet.
That is an incredibly profound way to put it, because, I've talked about how perception often is reality, right? Mm-hmm. And how other people perceive you, is often, the legacy that you're going to leave in this world. And, talking about you not being able to determine the kind of parent you are, but your child gets to determine, they are the fruit from your tree. Right. You are the tree, they are the fruit. Mm-hmm. And if the tree is rotten, the fruit's going to be rotten as well. And that the way that you phrase that, Nate, is very profound. It is very true, because we have to value ourselves. We have to, I think if we're going to be a good person, we have to believe in ourselves and believe that we are a good person. Mm-hmm. But if the people that are around us, if the people, my wife will determine the kind of husband I am. My child will determine the type of parent that I am.
Absolutely.
Yep. If it's painful to say it, but yeah, if my child thinks I'm garbage as a parent, then I'm probably garbage as a parent.
Well, when your child, if you pass before your child does, and your child is responsible for writing your obituary, if your child is responsible for showing up and giving your eulogy, if your child is responsible for putting those last words on your tomb or your urn, if they even see fit for you to have that, they're going to leave the lasting legacy of your life is going to be written by someone other than you.
Yep.
And to your point about why it's so important for us to find a way to not only coexist, but to exist in a fashion that is beneficial for everyone, is that like we're all going to be left and someone else is going to determine who we were during our time here.
Right. Well, that's why I love people like you, Nate, because you're out there trying to make the world a better place. I mean, the books that you've written, the engagements that you do, the speeches that you give are all so important in helping to build that roadmap, show people how to be good parents. Because again, I'll go back to a statement I made earlier in this conversation. It's one of the biggest problems that we face as a nation. One of the big problems we face as people is the fact that we do not have enough parents in this world that are truly engaged with their kids. Children will be what we allow them to become. And when we see kids out running the streets and doing these horrible things to other people and everything else, it's probably as a result of a rotten tree. And not always. There are exceptions to every rule. Yeah. But, typically those people that are out there, I saw something, Nate, I saw a video yesterday that just absolutely floored me. It just made me sick to my stomach. But a teacher had taken some kind of little game console, some little video game away from a kid, like it must have been a high school kid or whatever. And it showed a video camera in the hallway, and this kid comes chasing her out into the hallway, knocks her down. I mean, just blindsides her and knocks her down in the hallway, and starts stomping the hell out of this teacher and beating her and whatever. And I saw that, and like I said, it made me sick to my stomach. Mm-hmm. But my first thought when I saw something like that, my first thought was, this child, because if he's in high school, he's still a child. This child has, number one, he's got a lot of prison in his future. I guarantee it. And number two, I doubt that he had parents that were trying to instill in him any kind of value in human life or the humanity of others. And what that child's life would have been different had they had that.
Yeah, no question. Again, this is a nation, though, that convinces people, parents, for example, to give away their power, to outsource their parenting to someone else. So I'm going to use another analogy related to just driving. If you go out, you and I go out to a car, we could engage the ignition, but if the ignition doesn't have a battery, there's no power, then it doesn't mean anything. This country talks a great deal about parental engagement, but they've taken the battery from parents, from many parents. So there is no way to engage because there is no power. So you bring a child home and you don't know what to do. So you don't have any power. You've been powerless. Now, I'm not suggesting that you couldn't figure it out. What I'm suggesting is that we don't encourage. There's no encouragement to figure it out. Much like the case of what it means to be civil in a society. We have treasurers. We have secretaries for everything in this nation. We have Secretary of Treasury, Secretary of Transportation, Secretary of Energy. We don't have a Secretary for Civility. So what you or I might think is civil behavior. The United States does not have any guidance on what that looks like. So everybody is trying to decide for themselves, give themselves their own power to determine what is the right thing to do. Again, something else I think the country could do is perhaps we need a Secretary of Citizenship that defines for America what a good citizen, the minimal requirements of a good citizen in America. And that's one of the reasons why we're very divisive as a nation, because everybody gets to decide what they think it means to be a good human being or a good citizen. And their definition of that oftentimes is faulty. It's often flawed. So maybe we need someone from on high to say, here are the minimum standards that every American should have, and we should begin those standards at birth.
I think that's why we do what we do, right, Nate? I mean, that's why we're out there. Like I said, in I don't know if it was when we started our conversation for the podcast or when we were talking in our pre-conversation, but that's why I said it's so important that while others are out there spreading toxicity and putting out their divisive things, there are people out there like you and I, and we don't get the viral tweets or the the viral videos and the things like that, because that bridging the divide thing, that common humanity, that what can we do today to come together more civilly, that just doesn't have the appeal to people that toxicity does. And it's a terrible thing. But the way, I think that really gives people something to think about, like what you talk about there, that secretary of humanity or that secretary of civility. It's why I do so much work with the organization Braver Angels. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they're an incredible organization that's out there talking about bridging the divide, being able to have civil conversations with those whom we disagree. I've got a couple big speaking engagements coming up this year. That's what it's about. It's about civility. It's about being able to sit down and have a conversation with people that I don't agree with on topics, on most topics, whether it be political or the public health response to the pandemic, or things like climate change, and which I know is something that's very passionate for you. Because of the two people that we could sit down and have a civil conversation about it. That's the kind of thing that doesn't get a lot of play, Nate, is when people are civil to each other, it doesn't get the kind of attention that the toxicity does. And I think that's a real problem in our country. I think it's one of the biggest problems in our country. That's why I love having conversations like this, is because you and I could sit down and have a conversation about anything, but I know because of the person who you are, and I know because of the person who I am, we could have that kind of a good conversation.
Yeah, I agree. One of the things that people are fearful about conversations is that people don't like friction.
Yeah.
And so it's not, and I don't think that there's anything you can point to that grows without friction.
That's right.
Friction does not bother me. Birth is friction. Can't have a baby born without friction. The process to create a baby is friction. So, like the delivery of a child is friction. There's nothing. Cars move with friction. There's nothing that exists on the planet absent friction, except people somehow think that we can avoid friction in conversation and then be able to grow as a society. It's impossible.
That's a fact. Tell the DTH listeners what they can find at nathanielturner.com, what kind of things you might have coming up, and just some parting words for the listeners, because I mean, you've got so much wisdom to impart on people, and let us know what you got.
Cool. So the easiest way to find me is nathanielaturner.com. I would say that the A stands for what my middle name should have been, which would have been Adonis, like chocolate Adonis. It's opposed to my given birth middle name. What you'll find right now is a website that's a complete mess, but beneath it that you can't see it is being redesigned. So hopefully in the next month or so, that'll be completed. When the redesign is up, you'll find a website which one shares something that is unique. That daily I do a journal. I've been writing my life forward for the last 4+ years. Every day I take the first 20 minutes or so of my day writing my life as I'd like it to be, as opposed to the way that it is. And so you'll find a written and an audio version of that. We'll have some courses and some training on some of the things, some of the topics that you and I have talked about, some stuff for parents, some stuff just figuring out how to be better. And like you, I've got a couple speaking engagements going up this month, and I'll be in California for one the mid part of next month, and be in Buffalo doing some work in the month of April. So they're just staying busy, trying to make sure that when my time on this planet is up, people can say I did something that was a little bit useful.
Make sure it's well spent, and leave it better than it was when you got here, right? Be the change in the world that you want to see.
Yeah, and the only thing I will say to you in the end is to tell you that I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be here. You could have picked anybody else in the world to have a conversation with. There are 8 billion people you could have chosen, and you chose me today. So I'm grateful, and I don't take that for granted.
That's awesome, bud. I'm so grateful that you chose to join me, and I look forward to interacting with you more in the future. Thank you very much, Nate.
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
Friends, if there's anything in this episode that provided exceptional value to you, please make sure to hit that share button. Share it with your friends, share it far and wide. And of course, if you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe right from our website so you can get the Derate the Hate podcast sent to your email inbox every week. So this is Wilk wrapping up for the week saying get out there, be kind to one another, be grateful for everything that you've got, and remember it's up to you to make each and every day the day that you want it to be. If there is something that you would like to share with me, you can catch me on most social media platforms, or you can email me directly, wilk@wilksworld.com. With that, my friends, I am going to back on out of here, and we will catch you next week. Take care.